Hello, everyone. My name is Vlas Lezin, and I'm Chief Operating Officer at Silicon Valley Innovation Center. Today, we're going to talk about how can we solve human barriers in AI adoption. It's going to be a presentation without graphs. It's going to be a presentation with some insights that we have collected over the last 3 years with working with leading global organizations trying to adopt what Silicon Valley and other innovation hotspots have to offer when it comes down to artificial intelligence. We're going to talk more about people. We're going to talk about use cases that work well and those that don't work that well. And also, what are some of the things that you need to think about, both from the executive, managerial, and employee level, to make AI adoption a successful enterprise. So, without further delay, let's jump to my presentation. So as I talked about, it's going to be a presentation about people, it's going to be a presentation about history, it's going to be a presentation about stories of success and sometimes failures. So let's go and quickly establish one of the key components that we want to talk today when it comes down to AI. So AI is just another technology. I know it's mind-blowing, I know it's absolutely fantastic, but at the same time, it is a part of the larger technology ecosystem that we here in Silicon Valley have been experiencing for quite some time, and this is not necessarily the newest or most shocking technology that we have seen so far. So I'm going to definitely talk more about this pyramid, but let's move forward and start with some of the key things that we need to consider and we need to keep in mind as we move up and down this pyramid of AI adoption. So the first part is very obvious, that current advancement in AI is mainly based around LLMs, large language models. So that means that those models are specifically designed to create a text-like content. They excel in the tasks where you need to generate anything language-based, conversation, documents, novels, brainstorming, but it is not meant to be this general intelligence. Yes, the work is being done around it, but currently, vast majority of AI models are focusing on language predictions. The next part is that we are currently in the big bang of AI. So what does it mean? That means there have been so many technologies, so many agentic AIs, so many companies, so many solutions that have been popping up that promising to solve all of the problems. And the true reality is, as with the Big Bang, is that you're going to have some solutions that are going to turn into the supernovas, some solutions that are going to slowly die, and some solutions are not even going to make impact. So it's very important to distance yourself from hype, and especially if you're working in the established or highly regulated industry, understand that the simpler the solution is, the more it's probably adaptable and more useful to you. So again, there have been a lot of hype, there have been a lot of promises, there has been a lot of the development recently, but remember, right now, simpler is better. Then the last part is that AI is not really intelligent. It's not really intelligent in the way that we think about humans. It does not know right answers. The only thing that it's trying to do is trying to find most statistically pleasant answer to the question that you have asked. It is trying to create the answer that will please you with the most statistical based guess. Obviously, it's using the data. Obviously, it's using all of this training material, but it can hallucinate, so provide you wrong answers, or it might, so to speak, bend the reality to maybe please you a little bit more. So you need to be extra careful when delegating to AI tasks that require objective and completely deterministic, so time after time, answers to your questions. Think about it more as an artist. It's more about trying to create something that is interesting, something that is really exciting, but it is not the machine, surprisingly, that will generate same results over and over and over again. So let's go back to the model. So as now we kind of understand what AI is and what AI isn't. So those 3 points can be used for the executive buy-in to understand what it can and cannot do. And if I was to summarize it just in one phrase, that it is really creative way of do some of the mundane tasks that are not mission critical. This is, at least as of May of 2025, the current state. It might change in a couple months, it might change in a couple years, but right now it is really amazing technology that is still trying to find its ground in the world of the business outside of its direct purpose, which is language. So let's look into this pyramid. And I have been using this slide for the last 2 years to show a quite simple breakthrough. Is that when you think about AI is just a new thing, but every organization has limited budget and it has limited ability to attack certain things. And at this moment of time, we effectively can spend time on either AI or things like systems. And by systems, I mean, is our data is actually all in systems? Or do we have it in Excel? Do we have it in the paper files? Do we have it in paper napkins on somebody's work desk, right? So then the question becomes is that, okay, do I spend money on making sure that I put all of my data into the systems, or I spend it on the AI? And more likely than not, you will be better spending money on putting the data in the systems. It will help your organization quite on the different level than just introducing AI, sprinkling it on top. So again, it's a more of question of choice. Where do you put your focus and where do you put your money? But on the system level, AI can help you as well. And this is where AI sort of shines, is that it's really good with the unstructured documents. And here, I'm not necessarily talking about LLMs, but there are several of the solutions that are existing in the Azure or AWS or in Google environment that are really good in, let's say, taking handwritten notes or PDF documents and extracting data from there. It's also really good into analyzing big, long, boring documents and extracting something that humans should pay extra attention to. It also is very good with creating those unstructured documents. So if you give it a template and if you give it things to put in, it will be very good, again, going back to the large language models, of generating this information. So again, you can use AI with human supervision to extract data from unstructured sources and put it into your systems. And as I have talked about, is that you don't really trust AI with accuracy. If you extract the data from the unstructured documents, such as handwritten notes, you better have human who will actually go and verify this data. And I know it doesn't sound that amazing, but it will save so much time just by instead of manually entering data, that you can have AI to do effectively 97% of the work, and humans just go in and verify that those handwritten notes were actually properly inserted, and then if needed, just do some modifications. It will not be instantaneous, but it will save probably hundreds and hundreds of hours for you. So when we go to the next level, ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, this is how I consider when different departments can access each other's data via programmatic measures. So it's not me emailing someone saying, hey, John, can I have this data? If I need to have access, I can actually go and access this data programmatically and get it into my system. So that means that our systems are talking to each other. And maybe there's a data warehouse solution, maybe there is something else that allows us to actually extract data from various sources and share it within our organization. And again, it becomes quite a debate. Should we invest into this and what effect it's going to have on our operations, or do we invest in the AI? And also, please remember that it's not just about technology. It's not about extracting the data, putting in some kind of solution and put it somewhere. No, it's about building people and processes to actually make this happen. How can we actually build our processes so we can trust the data that has been extracted, that has been transformed, and that has been loaded into the various spaces? Then, if we look into how we can actually access this data and how we can use LLMs for it, is that they're not really meant for the precise tasks. As I said, it's more of the creative agent rather than an analyst or machine that will constantly be doing those things. It's probably one of the best interfaces we have of interacting with data if we do one important thing. We don't actually trust our LLMs to go and extract the data. We do have different ways of how you can load the data and vectorize the data and do all of this wonderful technological miracles. But at the same time, the best way of how you can use your large language models is the interface that will translate the requests that users have into the SQL or Python commands and then extract it from there. So that way, we limit that creativity of the large language model to minimum and using deterministic. So every time it produces the same results of SQL and Python to actually get this information. And it obviously will require several iterations. It will require your users to maybe in the beginning know the data, so they know both SQL and sort of AI, LLM at the same time, and they can verify it, they can play with it, they can adjust it. But that's also very important to define what the success would look like. And this is very important to say that, large language model will be just an interface and a wrapper around the technology that we probably already have. And we just using it for translating from human to machine and from machine to human. So that's a way of how you can access the data and be somewhat sure that the data that you get stays the same time after time. Then, I obviously talked about the systems, how we put the data from the paper napkin into the system. Then I talked about the ETL, how we take the data from that system and share it across the organization. So what about data here? Data here, I mean mainly a modeling. So for example, if we have different organizations within our holding company producing revenue numbers or sales numbers, we probably want to make sure that we can compare sales from one division to the sales of the other division, or maybe clients from those divisions. They kind of follow the same format. So that's where the data comes from. It's a modeling layer. It's a meta layer where it can actually give us information of how does our organization look like, not from the technological standpoint, which the bottom two layers are doing, but from the logical standpoint. And that's actually where AI comes quite handy, is that it can actually go and do really boring stuff. Once you have this SQL or Python connector to your data that provides stable data time after time, you can tell AI, go and analyze all of the tables, all of the data that we have, all of the information, structured, unstructured, whatever that is, and you can take all of this data and give me suggestions. Give me the best way of how I can bring one customer to the same common denominator as the other customer, although they might be in the different locations, in the different countries, done a little bit differently. It can also show me where my data or my information about my company is incomplete. It's really boring for humans just to go table after table and try to do it, but AI is great at suggesting things. So use that superpower to hyperscale your ability to understand your business from the logical perspective and not just from the technical perspective. Then, when we go to another level, we're talking about good old-fashioned machine learning or statistical teams. This is your typical data science. And very, very important is that AI does not replace statistical models. Your data science, your machine learning is quite a different beast. For example, if you do a credit scoring, you cannot really use LLM models to do the credit scoring time after time after time. Yes, it can analyze structured data. Yes, it can feed the data. Yes, it can do some of the less critical tasks. But in order to you to build truly performance stable and reasonable statistical models, you cannot rely on current AI. You rely on your old good machine learning and statistical models that you build, that you clean the data, that you verify, that you test. And I understand that AI obviously is just a type of machine learning, but I want to clearly separate it. Is that, let's say, credit scoring system is not LLM. It might use some of those LLM components, but AI in general does not replace statistical models. You still, if you want to really weaponize your data, you still need to heavily invest into your data science, into your machine learning, into really putting heavy mathematics on top of your business. And then lastly, if you really have all of those things built, right? If you have built the systems, if all of your data is available, if all of this data makes sense from the logical standpoint and accessible, and then you also weaponize this data through the measures of ML, statistical analysis, really cleaning the data, really preparing this data, really getting insights from this data, then you can introduce AI on top. And again, as I said, there's always applications that you can see in all of those layers, and a lot of banks, a lot of other organizations are doing all of those things, and you can see when you look through the news what they're actually doing, and you can think about this pyramid of where it's exactly fitting in. But effectively, AI comes on the very top when it says, you know what? Once we have a strong foundation of all of those things, or we invested as much as we want on all of those foundational pieces, then AI really makes sense. It really will now start to change our organization in the way that all the other things cannot. Again, I'm not saying that you should not invest in AI at all until you feel all of those other steps. But again, every time ask yourself, do I want to invest it in AI or do I want to invest it in something else? And that's an important part of bringing your organization to the table from the large perspective. And that becomes a really important part of your strategy, is that you tell your people, hey, you know what? Yes, we are working on it, and AI is definitely a thing, but it's not about replacing you. It's not about dropping everything and focusing on AI. It's really about how can we make our organization better, more digital, and working from there. And only then you can really go to full power AI, meaning that you're not just adopting some of the large language models, you're actually training your own models. You're creating your own models based on your company. And the less technical debt you have, the more powerful your AI model will be. So effectively, it requires almost zero tech and process debt. So all of your processes completely fleshed out, of your technology is great. And only then AI becomes the ultimate power to change. Because again, in other cases, your money and your time might be better spent elsewhere, not on the AI. And that's one of the probably biggest difference that we see when companies come to us from outside of Silicon Valley to the Silicon Valley, is that majority of the companies that are in Silicon Valley have very little technical debt from the kind of traditional business perspective. Obviously, every company has technical debt, but a lot of the companies started in the last 10 years, maybe 15 years. They were already cloud native. Each team has a data person. So they really started with a different mentality and they don't have this technical debt. So the more technical debt you have, the least effective your custom made or full power AI would be, just because it can make just so much impact with a limited data and limited processes. So let's start walking back. So if you just decided for whatever reason, you know what, let's just go and drop AI on top of our existing processes. If you do something like that, you effectively end up with you will end up with an assistant. You can chat with it. You can send different tasks to it. It will be pretty useful. It will still save time for some jobs. As I said, for example, for the entering the data from the handwritten notes, it might save a lot of time. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be assistant. And that becomes very important when you kind of think from this assistant standpoint, is that make your AI as secure as possible. So if you're small or medium organization, make sure that you have your own version, your own team space for the ChatGPT, Gemini, or DeepSeek, whatever model you're using. If you're in the bigger organization, bring it up on your own cluster. So as people load the data, load the document, not only you can maybe slightly fine-tune that AI model for your particular needs, but also you can make yourself a little bit less worried about the fact that your data might be out there in ether and people might be looking at it. Then if you do have AI and maybe you have a really good machine learning team, that's also a pretty powerful combination, because it will assist you with the iterations. Effectively, can look into your data. It can maybe suggest something about cleaning the data. It might actually suggest you something about how to build your models. It will not build that model for you, but it can significantly speed up the iterations. It can look into some of the patterns that you might have missed, and it will give you, 3 to 5 options. Just ask it to give you 3 to 5 options, and you will save yourself a lot of time and save your organization a lot of time if you have a really good data science and ML teams, to just do more iterations and try more theories and try more hypotheses. And then if we have, let's say we have a good AI, we have a good data team, but then we also have some modeling done, right? We know some modeling. Then we can actually use it as for the process optimization. That means that let it give you insights, right? Yes, your data might not be fully vetted. Yes, it might not be fully trustable. Yes, it might not be truly looking into every piece of your business. Maybe you have that modeling data, that logical model for maybe one piece of business. But even if you have just that one piece of business, it still can give you insights. It can actually help you analyze. It can be almost your own consultant. If it knows something about your data, if it knows maybe how many stores you have, what is the approximate people that are buying in that store, approximate employees in that store, it can give you insights that otherwise you might actually miss. So think about it as a consultant from that trying to learn your business. Yes, it will probably be wrong in the several places, but if you can build that system together with the good interface through the AI assistants, together with some of the data science, it will be still a great result. It will probably tell you something that you already know about your business, but it will also tell you things that you just haven't thought about. So again, really good from that standpoint, just give you insights. And then if you do have some of the data that is available, so you've done the ETL, so not only you know the approximate numbers of stores, or you know what kind of stores do from the modeling standpoint, but if you have access to some of the data, that becomes a quite powerful tool. It becomes a digital twin. It becomes a digital copy of your business, so it can actually predict and look into the possible scenarios. Again, it might be wrong, it might not have access to all of the data, but if it can look into the different departments, if it can look in the marketing, if it can look into the sales, if it can, let's say, look into the logistics. Yes, maybe some of this data is still not complete. Some of the data might still be on somebody's desktop, but it can still do a pretty good prediction, pretty good insights, and also it can actually analyze scenarios. And here it actually becomes, that creativity becomes a very useful. It's not creating you a perfect future. It's not trying to predict you the most likely Monte Carlo outcome of whatever work you're doing. What it does is just trying to say, well, you know what? Given the current trends and threats, let's say, that I'm thinking that this scenario is possible, and this scenario is possible, and this scenario is possible. And by the way, if you keep doing what you're doing right now, let's say with your marketing, or if you keep doing what you're doing with your logistics, you're probably going to be in the big trouble. Again, it will not give you a perfect result, but it will allow you to do a pretty good prediction and pretty good analysis. And then lastly, is that if you have everything on, if all of your data is out there, and as I said, and it can access AI through statistical models, through logical models, through different technological approaches, can actually get to every piece of your business, that will become a true game changer. Again, it's not going to be about LLM per se. LLM is just going to be this very top orchestrator that will really change how you operate your business, because it will be able to analyze, predict, and assist you with running your business better than any human could ever do, because it can do it 24/7. It can look into the places that regular humans would be too bored, or maybe not necessarily have the right skills to look at. So that's how you should think about AI, and those are the key barriers when we talk about people adoption. And this is how we should think about it. It's really that we do have more opportunities that we can think about versus those that we can implement. And if we break it down to people like this, they will realize and they will educate themselves, and you will educate them as well with those particular tasks, is that you're not just trying to throw this big, scary AI on top of your existing business, but you're trying to integrate it in the way that will assist every person in your organization to do their job better and drive your organization into the better future. So this is something that we have been doing and we are doing with a lot of our clients, where we're really trying to see where would be the good use cases of applying AI to their business using the best practices of Silicon Valley. If you want to learn more about our approach, if you want to learn more what Silicon Valley does when it comes down to AI, you know where to find us. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sticking with us for this 30 minutes. Thank you so much, and thank you for choosing SVIC.